125 feet below the surface of the earth, in a space only 8 inches wide, he was pinned by a 7-ton boulder. This is the horrifying true story of Floyd Collins, an ambitious caver who on January 30th of 1925 became completely trapped in a newly discovered cave. Over the course of the next 14 days, the entire nation watched helplessly as the mountain swallowed a man alive. Born in 1887, William Floyd Collins was a man born for the underground, an ambitious and restless spirit. He was the last of the legendary cave explorers, a dying breed in the 1920s, raised among Kentucky's Mammoth Cave region, an intricate subterranean labyrinth. Caves weren't merely holes in the ground in the eyes of Floyd. They were his life's blood, his obsession, and his livelihood. He was a pioneer in an era where many farmers were discovering caves and opening them as tourist attractions, and his driving ambition was to find new passages, connect vast underground systems, and guide the curious to these geological marvels. By 1925, his passion had a new and urgent purpose. He was determined to find the biggest tourist cave of them all as a much-needed source of income for his family. And in mid-January of that year, he signed a contract with a man named Doyle and another man named Ed Estes. This was to explore a rock overhang called Sand Cave on Doyle's farm. In return, he had agreed to half the rights of anything he found there. The day before he made his final descent into that cave, he showed Estes' son, 16-year-old Jewel, a skull he had reportedly discovered in a different cave. Floyd, a man who lived for the darkness, reportedly confessed he was afraid of not making it out alive from Sand Cave. His fears were well-founded. Even more astonishing for a caver of his experience and reputation, Floyd broke what many consider today as the cardinal rules of cave exploration. He went in completely alone, carrying only one light source, a fatal gamble in the absolute darkness. In addition to this, he was poorly clothed for the cold and the damp. He wore no helmet, but most critically, he didn't tell anybody where he was going or when they should expect him back. And on January 30th of 1925, a Friday, Floyd ventured into the cave just hours before a blizzard was predicted to come through. Before long, he found himself squirming through an extremely tight passage on his belly, pushing deeper than he ever had before. He believed he was on the verge of making a breakthrough, a discovery that would secure his family's future. Little did he know, within just a short while, his name would forever be associated with one of the most brutal caving tragedies of all time. He had just got done exploring a 50-foot pit, trying to find a new passage, but it ended up being a dead end. As he scaled the walls, heading back the way he came in, something horrible would take place. He accidentally nudged a rock, and that small disturbance created a chain reaction. Gravel began sliding from all around him, and in that terrifying instance, a 7-ton boulder shifted, pinning him by his leg, crushing it as he lay there in the cold, dark mud. He was now caught 125 feet below the ground, in a pocket 8 inches wide, 12 feet long, and the temperature was a chilling 16 degrees Fahrenheit. To make matters worse, as stated before, he was hardly equipped for the elements. This cave, his lifelong passion, had instantly become a prison with no escape. For hours he struggled. He pushed, he pulled, he screamed into the pitch-black void. But the rock held fast, and he was in a truly dreadful position, deep under Earth's crust, completely alone. It wasn't until his family got worried the next day that 16-year-old Jewel Estes was sent to the cave to look for him. Finding Floyd in the darkness, immediately reported the terrifying news. Floyd cried out, "Are you Jewel? Are you Jewel? For God's sakes, get me out of here, my leg is caught." Local miners, neighbors, and family rushed to the scene. One by one, the men attempted to reach Collins, caked in mud, grimly swearing they would never enter the hole again. The problem with this cave in particular is that it was highly prone to cave-ins. Dynamite had been used to blast various sections in the recent weeks. It was more of a treacherous tunnel with lots of extremely fragile, loose-hanging rocks that terrified all who dared to enter. At around 4 p.m. on that Saturday, Floyd's 22-year-old brother arrived on scene. The problem with this rescue immediately became clear. If a person were to enter head first, they had to work upside down. But if they went in feet first, they couldn't bring their upper body down to Floyd's level. It was during that time he gave Floyd a couple of ham sandwiches and a few drinks. He then started the process of trying to remove some of those loose rocks clamped around Collins' body. But every time the slightest bit of progress was made, more and more rocks slid down to take their place. It was a relentless battle in the claustrophobia-inducing depths. Homer resurfaced about 4 hours later, shivering, skin dangling from his fingers. Little progress had been made. Countless self-professed heroes descended with food and supplies, returning with positive reports that all ended up being lies. Nobody had been able to reach Collins except for Homer. Even teenage boys asked to deliver food and blankets failed to do so, stuffing supplies into cracks, then taking credit as they came back up top. Out of desperation, Homer re-entered the cave that Sunday night. Over the next 8 hours, Homer used a crowbar to hack away at the rock clamped around his brother. But the cave didn't yield. By sunrise on Monday, Homer was absolutely exhausted. Floyd, unaware of just how hard it was for other people to get down there, reportedly complained, "Why is everybody just sitting up there and talking?" As Homer ascended on February 1st, he was greeted by a sea of unfamiliar faces and the smell of moonshine. This was the moment he met William B. Miller, a 21-year-old reporter known as Skeets. When Homer challenged him to go down, Miller, driven by ambition for a story, removed his suit, donned his coveralls, and grabbed a flashlight. Weighing about 117 pounds, Miller slowly made his way down to Floyd, his heart pounding and his muscles trembling. He eventually reached Collins. Miller took mental notes and scurried back up top, taking about a half an hour to reach the surface. Exhausted, but with a profound understanding of Collins' immense talent and the extreme difficulty of this rescue. Later that day, Lieutenant Robert Burton, a Louisville firefighter, also made it within reach. He proposed a desperate idea. Use a rope to pull him out of the rock, even if it meant he lost his leg. Collins, possibly delirious, consented to this decision, agreeing to have his foot completely yanked off. That being said, Homer strapped up a harness and the men began to pull, but Floyd's body, already warped, bent into an agonizing L shape, the cave filled with horrifying screams. "Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it." No progress had been made, and they only amplified his suffering. Burton himself fainted crawling towards the exit, and many men had to be carried away, utterly exhausted and shaken by this brutal attempt. And this is where the nightmare truly began. On February 14th of 1925, after he had been trapped for 6 days, a massive secondary rockfall occurred in the small passageway. This wasn't just a little shift, it was a devastating collapse, completely sealing off the tunnel that gave access to Floyd. He was no longer just pinned, he was utterly isolated, entombed alive, unreachable by the outside world. Only faint sounds could pass through the barrier. This secondary collapse transformed his predicament from desperate to seemingly impossible. It was at this point news of Floyd's entrapment spread like wildfire. Soon, a desperate, disorganized, but utterly determined rescue effort began. Miners, engineers, and volunteers converged on Sand Cave, trying everything they possibly could. The decision was made to dig a 55-foot vertical shaft, bypassing the sealed-off route. More than 1,000 workers, volunteers, and National Guardsmen worked around the clock, battling exhaustion, hunger, and falling rock. Some of those days, they only made a few feet of progress, racing against time in the mountain. The sheer magnitude of this effort was unprecedented, turning a local tragedy into a national obsession. But as the world watched, a horrifying realization began to set in. The cave was fighting back. As they continued digging away at this shaft, news of Floyd's predicament wasn't just a local story. It absolutely exploded into America's first true media circus. An astounding 2,000 newspaper reporters, photographers, and radio broadcasters were on the site. A special telegraph office was set up, and radio stations broadcasted hourly reports from the scene to a captivated nation. Reporters and airplanes even circled the site. More than 50,000 spectators descended upon this Kentucky countryside, creating a bizarre carnival atmosphere. Hawkers and vendors sold hot dogs, ice creams, souvenirs, and even miniature flashlights as a man fought for his life. This unprecedented spectacle brought an immense pressure to the rescue efforts, turning a desperate fight for life into a public shit show. The news even pushed the latest activities of President Calvin Coolidge and Prohibition off of the front pages. For days, the nation hung on every word and every single dispatch that came out of that cave. Floyd's own brother, Homer Collins, became the public's primary link to the man trapped below, risking his own life repeatedly in order to deliver messages. But the questions had started to mount. Was he still alive, and could they reach him in time? Amidst the spectacle and the desperate hope, the very conditions that allowed the world to watch were sealing Floyd's fate. The situation dragged on for over 2 weeks. Rescuers could communicate, but they couldn't free him. And on February 13th, they had finally made it past the secondary collapse. But the battle was far from over. They still needed to dig an additional 30 feet laterally in order to reach Collins. By the time they were able to do so, it was far too late. He had long since passed away. His body, broken from the elements, had succumbed to the hunger, the thirst, but most importantly, hypothermia. The rescue attempt, one of the most complex in history, had failed. The decision was made that day that it was too dangerous to go in there and retrieve his body. Floyd Collins was left inside, the cave becoming his temporary resting place. But the bizarre, unsettling legacy of Floyd Collins was far from over. What happened next would cement his story as one of America's most terrifying and unforgettable tales. Even in death, the cave wouldn't release him, not immediately. His body remained there for more than 2 months. Then in April of 1925, a private expedition finally retrieved his remains. But this was not a peaceful burial. Instead, his body became a bizarre public spectacle. They were controversially purchased by a distant relative, a local show cave owner, for $10,000. He was embalmed, placed in a glass coffin, and set on display for years, a grim testament to the enduring, morbid power of his story. His body was even stolen from its burial site briefly. His body remained on display until 1989, when his family eventually decided to bury him in a nearby cemetery. The Floyd Collins tragedy forever changed cave exploration, leading to new safety protocols and regulations. But the story remains, a chilling reminder of human ambition clashing with the brutal indifference of nature. It's a tale of unimaginable claustrophobia, desperate heroism, the birth of the media frenzy, and a man whose battle against the earth became a macabre nation obsession. Floyd Collins remains a permanent, haunting legend of the dark, silent depths swallowed by the mountains he so dearly loved. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, that brings us to the end of this video. If you feel like you learned something new, or you simply like this style of content, consider leaving a like, maybe subscribing, as it would very much help this channel reach its target audience. In addition to that, if there are any topics you'd like me to deep dive into next, feel free to leave your requests in the comments section below, and I will try to get to them as fast as I possibly can. That being said, I sincerely hope you have an amazing, whatever it is, wherever you may be. Peace out.